Hallo, welkom beste kijkers. Je bent nu aan het kijken naar de nieuwe reality show. Mijn naam is Elias en we staan hier vandaag op een bijzondere locatie, namelijk in Amsterdam voor het Apollo Hotel. En we gaan David Icke interviewen. Hij heeft dit weekend aanstaande zaterdag een optreden in de Rij. Een Purity event heeft het mogelijk gemaakt dat wij hem ook even mogen interviewen. Okay, David. Welcome. Thanks to have you here. It's very nice. You became world famous in the last years with your work. And my question is, what made you wake up? What triggered it?
Well, me, oh good, it's a long story, which I've told in many ways. Basically, I was a national spokesman for the British Green Party. In the 1980s, I was also a television presenter with the BBC, news and sport, mostly sport in the end. And I started having strange experiences through 1989 when I was doing those jobs, but when I was in a room alone, it felt like I wasn't alone. Like I was in a hotel room or something and there was no one here, but it felt like there was something here, like a presence. Mm-hmm. And it was all new to me. I wasn't into this stuff at all. Although, from the time I was a kid, I'd rejected religion. I'd also rejected the idea that, we're a cosmic accident. Somehow we miraculously come into life and then disappear, into nothingness, As someone rightly said about this reality, to say it came into existence by accident is like saying a hurricane blew through a scrapyard and assembled a 747. I mean, it's insane. So I've rejected all that stuff. But I hadn't really looked at the alternative. You're getting on with your life as you do. But something was in the room, there was a presence around me, it got stronger and stronger. And eventually, long story short, I ended up going to a psychic to see if she'd pick up what was around me. And I got told that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. I was going to write all these books. I was going to be world famous. I would face enormous opposition, but they would always be there to protect me. And that knowledge would be put into my mind and I would be led to knowledge, and bingo, it happened. And it's now, I'm coming up towards 22 years since it happened, and I started on this journey, and it's all kind of happened. This is where the information has come from. I'll get insights, and then when I've got an insight, suddenly information relating to that subject or that insight comes at me from all angles, And it's been a process that's gone on and on. And you see, when you are dealing, up to a point, actually up to quite a point, you can research the conspiracy within 5 sense reality with names, dates, places, cross-referencing things, manipulated wars, manipulated terrorist events, manipulated banking systems and all that stuff. And that needs doing, and I've been doing it for 22 years and I continue to do it. We need to know all about that. But it's been very clear to me over the years that if you're an expert on 9/11, an expert on banking scams and all this stuff, you're still walking around the outer rim of the rabbit hole. You've not even entered it yet. And to get deep in the rabbit hole, a number of things are necessary. First of all, you have to be free from preconceived idea. Because if you have a preconceived religious belief or political belief or scientific belief, then you're going to go so far and you're going to go any further. Because once you get slightly into the rabbit hole, all those things start to fall apart. So thus, if you want to keep them, don't go any deeper. And lots of people do that. They won't go deeper because of the effect on their belief system. And there's another part of this, which is that people who can open their minds to these deeper, more, if you like, on the face of it, but not really, bizarre concepts, they might open their minds to think, hey, this makes sense, this looks like this is what's going on. But then they have the barrier of the fear of what other people think to get through. And thus they'll suppress what they put out because they're thinking, well, it's so far out, what will people think? People will laugh at me. I couldn't give a damn if people laugh at me. It's of no interest to me. And when I look at my life, and I think, a lot of people, indeed, even most people, if they look at their lives, they'll see that far from being a series of random events, They are a series of events that connect with each other and lead somewhere. Now, where they lead depends whether we're going to come from an aspect of the head, mind, which is going to stop you going into places where your intuition is driving you. And those that do go with their intuition overcome the limitations of mind, and when the mind's going, you can't do that, people will say this, people will say that, going anyway, then they'll have a very different life experience to someone whose head is in control, saying no, 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 stay within the norm, stay within convention. But either way, there are a series of synchronistic events or connected events which are leading you in a certain direction. So when I look at my life from this point of view, I went through enormous, fantastic, possibly unprecedented levels of ridicule in Britain in the early 1990s, because I was a television presenter and a national spokesman for the Green Party. I obviously was well known in Britain, and thus when I came out with some of this stuff, it was widely reported and Ike's a nutter. And one of two things happens when you're faced with that. You either go under, or you run away and hide, or you say, I am me, I am free. This is me, and if you don't like it, well, laugh or do the other thing, it doesn't matter to me. And I chose the latter. And you see, when you go with your intuition, it was all intuition, I feel to do this, I must do this, crazy as it may have seemed to this. When you go into your intuition, you're accessing your feelings. What do? We say, I feel. We don't say, I feel. We say, I'm thinking. We go, I feel. And here we connect to much higher levels of awareness that can see the journey from source to sea, whereas this can see the next turn on the river. So I'm experiencing that mass, incessant, merciless ridicule in the early 1990s. And I'm going, what's going on, what's going on? Although this was going, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, but this is going, what's going on? And then further down the symbolic river, the journey, just round the corner, I'm going to be asked to talk about shape-shifting reptilian entities and the fact the moon's not what it seems to be. Now, I mean, if you're not cleared out here through that mass ridicule of the fear or concern with what other people think, no way round that corner you're going to start talking about that. Because people said to me, didn't you think that people would laugh when you said, do you know, I did, but I did it anyway? You know, yeah. As if I thought, oh no, no one's going to, of course they're going to bloody laugh. They're in these tiny boxes the size of a pea. So therefore when anyone talks beyond the pea, they're going to laugh and ridicule or dismiss or condemn. Of course they are, but vast and increasingly gathering numbers of people are not in the pea anymore. They're out of it. You know, the pea has been burst. The bubble's been burst, and they're starting to look at self in the world in a much more expanded way, which is fantastic. I mean, it's just such a joy to watch it. So once I've come through that ridicule in a completely different state of being, no longer do I care what other people think. Then this synchronistic journey unfolded of coming across people, places, information, personal experiences, which were like some force giving me pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. Actually, almost in the right order to most quickly see where they went. And over the last 22 years, an extraordinary tapestry of information has come together that shows very clearly the world we thought we lived in is not the one we're actually living in.
So you get all this information in a kind of mysterious way also, you get some guidance, you wrote books, gave many seminars and gave interviews, so the people on planet Earth get through your work a little bit better idea how the power structures are functioning. And do you see that these power structures of the Illuminati are breaking down at the moment?
Well, I think what's happening now in terms of public perception, and it's one of the reasons that so many people around the world are looking at my work now, either for the first time or in a new light, is because I said years and years ago, there's going to come a point where this covert manipulation is going to break the surface. It has to, because if you're covertly manipulating to bring about a massive structural change in human society based on fierce global centralization of power, then there's a point where that has to break the surface where people can see it. We've been in that period now for a little while, and because every day now, if people just want to look at sources of information where this is being pointed out, or even if they just open their minds and look at stuff even in the mainstream media, you can see this incessant destruction of basic human rights and freedoms and civil liberties. And at the same time, whether it's economic, political, business, media ownership, this extraordinarily fast expanding centralization of ownership and control of all these institutions that dictate so much about our lives. And so it's like for most of this last 20 years, I've been talking about this is coming, this is coming. Well, actually it's here now. And it's just a question of how deeply are we going to allow ourselves to go into it. And so you've got this combination, which is very, very powerful now for increasing numbers of people, where you've got the information that is pointing out why the world is as it is, and where they want to take us as a human society, and the mind and emotional manipulation techniques designed to take us there. And at the same time that information is becoming more and more widely available, events in the world, in people's daily experience, are supporting that by what is unfolding. So that combination is really, really powerful, and enormous numbers of people now around the world, compared with not that long ago, are now looking at this and saying, actually, this is starting to make sense of the world. And we've seen nothing yet, because once the waters break in the collective human consciousness to realize what the game is, then this is going to expand very fast. In terms of the Illuminati, on one level they're pushing this forward faster and faster, but on another there is a sense of panic. There is absolutely a sense of panic, and it's almost, if you want to use sporting terms, it's like a race to the line, because they are trying to impose a structure of human control, human dictatorship and human surveillance that will oppress and suppress any mass response from the people before the awakening of the human collective mind has reached a point where they can't do it anymore. So it's a race to the line. And so they're pushing it on and pushing it on. And because they're pushing it on so fast, because of this desperation to get all these structures of the Orwellian global state in place before the awakening blows it away, they're starting to become more blatant in what they're doing. And this is only adding to the understanding of the people that actually this is going on. Look at it. And what we're seeing in Europe now is just absolutely an open book to anybody who has understood even the basics of where this cabal wants to take the world and the methods of manipulation they use to take us there.
What do you think the reason why the people now waking up, what we see in the Occupy movement and everywhere in the world actually, has this to do something with the financial situation worldwide, or something to do with the galactic cycle which comes to an end, which triggers us to go, which brings more higher energies, which trigger us again to see more clear? Well,
I have a different view of the galactic cycles, really, which I go into in a book that's out in January called Remember Who You Are. But in terms of the Wall Street protests and their like around the world, 2 weeks ago I spoke in New York. I spent about 3 days every day at the Wall Street protests. And what I saw was a large number of very genuine people. There's a lot of manipulation of that, but there's a lot of genuine people. And also I saw a brutal, over-the-top military force in New York wearing supposedly police uniforms. And it was very much a a coming together in so many ways of people awakening to the world, not awakening to it in all the detail of the game and how it's played, which is what has to happen if the protests are going to be effective in the end in turning things around, or contributing to turning things around. But it was also to see the Orwellian police state in front of your face. See, what they have in America, they have something called the Posse Comitatus Act, which is of 1878, which is supposed to prevent the military involvement in domestic law enforcement. So what they're doing, and we're seeing it all around the world, is they're putting the military on the streets with military weaponry increasingly, with military uniforms and military helmets, and they're calling them the police. Yeah. So they're overcoming the Posse Comitatus Act. Oh, it's not the look, the guy's got a machine gun, right? And he's got a military helmet on, he's got a military uniform, it just happens to be blue instead of khaki. No, he's a policeman, it says it. Yes, it says it on his uniform. That's where him and being a policeman ends, you know. So this is how they're doing it, and around the world. I mean, in Britain, little Britain. We used to have a program on British television called Dixon of Dock Green when I was a kid, in black and white in the 1950s, and he was the policeman with his old helmet on, and he used to wander down on his beat, not a gun in sight, nothing. Oh, hello, Mrs. Jones. How are you doing today? Oh, all right. I hope you get better, and all this stuff. Now, increasingly British policemen, guns, batons, the frickin' lot, and they're looking more and more like American military police. That's what we should be calling them, all the time. So this is a global thing, and it's the unfolding, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe, in stages, moving on, step, towards this global Orwellian police state, in which in the end there will be one police force, one global police force, one global military, one global government, one global financial system based on a global central bank, one global currency, which would be electronic, no cash, and a people that are microchipped at birth, so that from the moment people enter this reality at birth, they will be externally manipulated through the chip. This is where they want to take us. And the methods they are overwhelmingly using to take us there are the totalitarian tiptoe, doing it in steps, promoting every step as not connected to the previous step or the next step, when they fundamentally are. And then this other technique, the main one, that I dubbed a long time ago now, problem, reaction, solution, where you create the problem, you get the covertly, you blame someone else for the problem or something else for the problem. You then tell the people the version of the problem you want them to believe, i.e. the cover story lie, through an unquestioning mainstream media. And then you want the people to react with fear, with anguish, with do something. And then you offer then openly, with changes in legislation and society, the solutions to the problems you covertly created. Mm. And what we're seeing now in Europe, as we sit here speaking, is a massively blatant problem reaction solution in which they are systematically crashing the European economies so that they can offer the solution, which is what Merkel and Sarkozy are, both front people for the bloody cabal to their fingertips, which is what they call, and this guy, Jose Barroso, the president of the Commission, never seen a ballot box in terms of Europe in his blooming life. And what's his name, Herman Van Rompuy, this unelected president, another one, you know, if he saw a ballot box, he'd ask someone what it was. And these people are pushing for, they're using the words now. They were frightened before, they didn't want to frighten the children. Oh no, it's not about centralisation of power, it's about just good for Europe. Now they're using the term that they've been after all along, deep integration. Now when you think that 75% of the laws that are inflicted upon British people now start out in the Commission in Brussels, their version of the Soviet Politburo, then what does deep integration mean? Does that mean it means we've got nothing we're going to decide in Britain and these other countries of Europe anymore? That's what they're talking about, this fierce centralised dictatorship. And when you look at the quotes from this man who's known as the father of Europe, or what was become the EU, this guy Jean Monnet, a Rothschild frontman, he wrote a letter to a friend the day after I was born, for enough, 30th of April 1952. And in this letter, I'm paraphrasing, he said, we are going to bring about the superstate. This is in 1952, by stealth, in steps, by constantly centralizing power, and at each point justifying it by economic means. And they're still doing it today as we're talking. What we have is a series of problems coldly engineered to which they can offer solutions to push this agenda on of more and more centralization of power towards this single global electronic currency, world government, world central bank, world army, and all that stuff. And that's why, and for many other reasons around the world, that the world is in a constant state of lurching from crisis to crisis. If you're using this technique, as they do absolutely incessantly, of create the problem, get the reaction, do something, offer the solution, then here demands an endless supply of problems. What you don't want at stage one is harmony. Yeah. You don't want something working. You don't want people happy with the status quo. You don't want the status quo providing for people in a fair way. No, you have to, because if you go along when things are working and everything's fine and people are happy, and you say, well, we're going to change it, but what do you mean you're going to change it? Everything's fine, go away. So you need a constant, endless source of problems. And so every time they offer a solution, it's not actually a solution. It's the next step to the next crisis. Now you look at this thing in Europe with the euro crisis. Every time through these last few weeks, months, and so, that they've come up with a solution, and everyone's going, this is what they do, you see. They're doing it this week as we're talking. You have this feverish, oh, there's a crisis, oh, and they're having a crisis meeting, and oh my goodness, if they don't decide to centralise power and give more power to the centre, oh, it'd be terrible, what's going to happen? So this week, while we're talking, there's a crisis meeting. What are we on? We're on the Thursday, it's tomorrow. All orchestrated by these front people, Sarkozy and Merkel. And so earlier on in the week, this credit ratings agency called Standard & Poor's comes out and says, well, if it's not sorted out, we're going to have to downgrade all European economies. The people controlling Merkel and Sarkozy are the people that control the credit rating agency, making that statement to support Sarkozy and Merkel in their pressure for this these changes in the treaty to get more and more centralisation of power and more destruction of national sovereignty. Then Timothy Geithner comes over to Europe, throwing his oar in. Timothy Geithner, the Treasury Secretary in the US, who was one of the major architects of the crash in 2008 as head of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the major bank in the Federal Reserve private banking system that controls the American economy. And he's coming over saying, oh, it's got to be sorted out, oh, it's going to be terrible. In other words, you look at Sarkozy and Merkel, controlled by the Rothschild cabal. You look at Standard & Poor's, the credit ratings agency, controlled by the Rothschild cabal. You look at Timothy Geithner, absolute bagman for the Rothschild cabal. And so it seems the Americans made a statement, oh, credit ratings agencies make a statement. But actually they're all controlled by the same force, yeah. And they're all creating the situation where there's this panic. Oh, you see it again and again over the last few months. Oh, there's a crisis meeting in Europe, and Sarkozy standing there on his box making a bloody statement, and the lady from bloody Germany's next to him making this statement that supports him, and so, oh, and they go, crisis over. Oh, they won their way. They've solved the crisis. A few weeks later, new frickin' crisis, and the whole process goes through again and again. And this is how it works. Create the crisis, offer the solution. So you need constant crises. And if they don't naturally occur, which they don't if left to their own devices, then you make them occur.
So this is a little bit the trick they're playing, how they keep the people busy. We know at Niburu we are also very focused on solutions like the law Nezara and the content of it. Maybe you heard about it, or like free energy devices. Is it important for us to also put the focus on this stuff to get this knowledge known to the people that there are solutions to the current problems we have?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was Einstein who said words to the effect of you can't solve problems with the same level of consciousness that created them. And so many things that appear to be without a solution, whether they be environmental, social, whatever. When you open your mind and let consciousness in, and you go beyond that level of perception that we have in current politics and for a long time past, in current business, in current banking, and even in current public wider perception of self and reality. When you go beyond the limits of that and you open the door to consciousness, anyone can do it, then these things become solvable. Actually, it's quite straightforwardly solvable, rather than being these great challenges for which there seems to be no answer. And even within the realms of even certain levels of closed-mindedness, the technology exists to overcome so many things. And you mentioned free energy technology. For a start, you know, the base foundation of this universe is vibrational information, and another level of the universe is electrical. Another level is digital, another level is holographic, which is the one we think is physical. So all these fields of information and power are all occupying the same space as each other. So we are aware with the conscious mind here of what we think is a physical world. Actually, it's a holographic world, illusory physical. This can be explained very simply, as I do in my books and talks. But you can also access, and people like Nikola Tesla certainly did, this genius scientist of the 20th century, supposed to come from Croatia, but the Serbians claim him as well, but it doesn't matter where he came from. What matters is what he did. Yeah. Amazing number of people get really, really kind of, hey, he's not from Croatia, he's from Serbia. Does it really matter to what's going on now? I mean, do you think he cares now where he is? You know what I mean? But anyway, he was accessing these electrical, vibrational fields, and he was turning them into usable warmth and power. And of course, because he was the man that discovered DC electricity and how to access it, he was the man that really discovered the electric light, not Edison's mob. And he was the man that discovered all this stuff about radio waves and stuff, not Marconi. But a lot of people don't know this, that Tesla took Marconi to the Supreme Court in America and had him, basically charged, if you like, with stealing his patents on radio waves and all that stuff to go with him. And he won. He won. Because Marconi went to Tesla and said, oh, I'd like to work with you. I think you're ever so clever and all this stuff. And he worked with him and he pinched all the patents while he was working for him, right? So people say, yeah, radio, Marconi. No, Tesla. And Tesla, back in the early part, the first 50 years, I think he died in 1943, penniless in a New York hotel room. Tragic. Genius. He had understood the way that these things worked, and he could have given us free energy technology then, which accesses the natural vibrational electrical fields and turns it into useful warmth and power without any carbon dioxide. Now, I've been saying for a long time that this whole idea of human-caused global warming, actually they've changed it to climate change now since temperatures have been falling, is an absolute tosh. It is a political scam of colossal proportions, and it is scientific insanity, really, when you look at it. Even some of the great advocates of it are now breaking ranks and saying, well, actually, it's not true. But this is the point. If Tesla had the understanding of how to give us free energy technology, when I say free energy technology, by the way, I don't just mean the ability to create power more than the device takes to make the power be created. In other words, you get an add-on of energy from the technology being used, thus you can use that to power your homes and everything. I'm talking free in terms of money, because once the technology's been bought and put in place, it's just running with the natural fields of the earth, and there's no utility bills. Now, these people, these forces that are trying to, and people don't realize unless you do the research, fundamentally transform human society, justified by saving the planet from climate change caused by humans, they claim. The same people that are selling this lie are the same people that are suppressing the use of free energy technology as a matter of course in human society. If they were telling the truth, they're not, and they know it, and they really cared about the environment and what they call climate change caused by humans, if they believed it was true, then why are those same people and forces suppressing technology that would dramatically reduce the amount of carbon dioxide produced by human technology, because it wouldn't be necessary anymore in so many areas, if not all areas? It's because they're lying about climate change to justify a transformation of human society. And they absolutely don't want people to have access to free energy technology, because if you are going to control human society, you have to get them dependent upon you and what you produce. And you have to get them to have to pay the bills that you generate for them for these basics of life, so that you have control over the population. You remove utility bills, and suddenly people are starting to get choice, because once you have to earn a lot of money, or a lot of the percentage of your income, indeed all of it with so many people, just for the basics of life, well, they got you. You haven't got a lot of choice. You know, I'd like to do this, I'd like to, oh, I haven't got the money, I've got to pay the utility bills, got to pay the mortgage, got to do this. So the more you squeeze the amount of money that people need for the basics, the more you release for them to have choice. And so that's the last thing they want is people not to have these massive energy bills to pay all the time, because you know, you're releasing choice to the population, or more choice. That's the last thing they want. Yeah. It's a simple you know, equation that scarcity equals dependency equals control, and abundance equals choice equals freedom. Now, what free energy would release in so many areas is abundance.
Yeah, free society.
Abundance. Whereas the suppression of it creates dependency. Dependency on what? The power companies owned by the same people that control the banks, that control the governments.
Yeah, it's a very clear structure we can see here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another solution for us at Niburu is the contact with benevolent ET races. You have been to Kreda Mutwa. I saw some videos where you also talked about this ET contact. What do you know about this, and do you know anything about ETs switching off nuclear weapons?
No, I don't know about that in the sense of I didn't see them do it, but I've heard the stories. Maybe some of them are true, maybe they're not. I don't like talking about things I've not researched. I think that kind of insults the audience a bit. So, but obviously, it's one of the things I do at my talks is I put a picture on the screen of just part of our galaxy, never mind the freaking universe, just part of our galaxy, and it's an explosion of lights. I mean, and you look at it and you think, so we're alone, are we? You know, what do you think? Do you think we're alone? What's the chances, do you reckon? I mean, it's insane. And not only are we seeing an explosion of lights, we're seeing an explosion of lights within a tiny, tiny frequency band called visible light, which is the only one that we can decode into what we call, you know, the world that we can see. And thus there are multiple other frequency ranges, dimensions, whatever you want to call them, of life, of worlds, of whatever term you want to use, which are sharing the same space as this one. And not only are we dealing with what people call extraterrestrials that operate within visible light. We're talking about what I call interdimensionals, which can move in and out of visible light. And of course, when they enter visible light, which as the frequency range that we're decoding into this world, they appear out of nowhere. And then when they leave visible light, they, to the observer, disappear into nowhere. And again, if you don't look at how reality works, even in its basic form, and of course mainstream science is funded not to do that, then things like, oh, I saw this extraterrestrial, it appeared out of nowhere. I saw this UFO and it just disappeared in front of my eyes. If you don't realise that what I've just described, you go, God, he's been on the pop again. You know, are you taking them pills again? Because this is an important point, this. If you can suppress, by suppressing scientific information of the wider scientific information beyond mainstream science, and you can suppress people's perception of what's possible, that's a massive, massive tool in your armory of suppressing humanity in general. Because when someone comes along, and this is the sense of the possible. Why? Because that's what they was told in the education system. That's what they were told by science. That's what they're told by their peers who've gone through the same production line of programming. You know, that's what the media says. So when someone comes along and says, actually, this is happening, that's not possible, that's impossible, you're mad. No, it's not possible from your perception of the possible, but it's still possible. One of the analogies I use is, imagine back in the Stone Age, someone's knocking rocks together, and someone comes up, Argo, however they used to speak, and says, you see that big light in the sky, the moon? You can fly there. You're mad. He's been on the mammoth juice again. Yeah. And yet, although he's still knocking rocks together, clearly it is possible, they couldn't do it, to fly to the moon. Now, not necessarily with the technology we're told, by the way. In fact, probably not. But the thing is that if you take that analogy, we think we're at the cutting edge of human evolution, thanks to you know, this whole survival of the fittest and all this nonsense that was sold to keep us in ignorance, the old Darwin stuff. But if you even look at where we are now technologically, compared with what other expressions of life, what we call extraterrestrials or interdimensionals, can do, we are still knocking rocks together.
Yeah, that's
and thus, you know, when people like me come along and say this is happening and this is this and this is that, if people come from the perspective of what humans can do is the cutting edge of what can be done, then they'll just dismiss it. But if you can open your mind and realize that we are, to repeat the phrase, compared with what is possible, knocking rocks together, then you can start to see that there are things going on around us. There are things going on in our daily experience that are light years technologically beyond where we are. And if we don't open our minds to that, then we'll never grasp the scale of the situation that we're facing. But there are, in my view, and I've been writing this for a long time, there are what I call interdimensionals, particularly, that are manipulating human society, that are using hybrid bloodlines within visible light human society to manipulate society on their behalf. But there are, as there are in everywhere you want to travel in this great infinity, there are also benevolent non-humans that are fundamentally supporting and working towards this awakening of the human mind from its prison cell, to allow us to awaken to the true magnitude of who we are. Because it's not that we are what we think we are. That is suppressed humanity. That is software humanity. Real humanity, open to consciousness, is breathtaking in its potential, in its genius, in its ability to manifest its own reality. And so, you know, when I look back to when this started for me nearly 22 years ago, and what the psychic told me was all those things I mentioned earlier. And they've happened. They've either happened or they are happening, because what came through that psychic, she said that they are asking me to tell you this. And it was that, this is 1990, March 1990, that a great awakening is coming, basically. Humanity is going to awaken from its, in effect, comatose state, like it's been in a hypnotic trance, actually literally when you get deeper into it. And that all that had been hidden would be brought to the surface in this period. And that people would awaken to their true self. There would be, not in religious terms, but there would be a, quote, spiritual awakening. Now, when you look over this period of 22 years, and you look now, I mean, I remember not a terrific number of years ago, when it was like banging your head against that wall, but not anymore. Instead of a few coming, they're coming in their thousands all over the world. I'm now in Amsterdam as we speak, and it's at the end of what you might call a world tour. It sounds grand, but I guess that's what it is, really, a speaking tour, which has taken me to America twice, to Germany, to Rome, to Sweden, to Denmark, all over Australia, about 6 events, New Zealand, back to America in Cleveland and New York, then to into Europe with Croatia in Zagreb last week, and now here this week. And everywhere you go, boom, minds are flying open, and it's an exponential curve. So while we're having all this stuff thrown at us, something else is going on as well. And so what I'm saying here is that what I was told 22 years ago was going to happen. It's happening. It's demonstrably happening all over the world. And then you look at the other angle that I was told. And again, as with the awakening 22 years ago, when I was told this, there was no sign of it, really, at all. The other thing was that what had been hidden would come to the surface. This energetic change was a vibrational change. I gave it the name Truth Vibrations for this reason. First book I ever wrote on this stuff 28 odd years ago, 21 years ago. It's called The Truth Vibrations, after this vibrational change I was told about. And that it was going to bring to the surface all that had been hidden. Now, if we'd have been having this conversation 20 years ago, what would we have known? If we're having this conversation 10 years ago, what would we have known? Look at what we know now we didn't know 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. It's happening. These things are happening. So, in terms of the question about ETs or non-human intelligence, then who were they that contacted me 22 years ago and said, you're going to go out and do this, and it was all planned before you came here, they said. It's all planned before you incarnated, was the line. So all you got to do is follow the clues. That's what I was told 22 years ago. That's all I've done. I described it earlier about, you know, the synchronicity. Just follow the clues. And you have to, it has to be done that way, because there comes a point where you go so far out of this reality and the norms of this reality that you're going into areas where if it doesn't come that way, you ain't going to get it. Because that information doesn't really exist within visible light. You've got to get it beyond visible light. And through this whole period, they have been clearly feeding me information and guiding me through the maze, so that I don't keep going down channels in the maze that have a big edge on the end, you know, and turn around and come back. So who are they? Whoever they are, whoever this awareness is working towards the emancipation, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, of humanity. Now, in some ways it will take the form of extraterrestrials, as we call them, in some kind of what we call physical form, holographic form. In other ways it will take the form of interdimensional entities, and eventually it's going out into the realms of no form, pure consciousness. So you know, I'll be honest, if bringing this whole edifice of power and all that goes, that underpins it in the unseen, was down to humans in bodies working within holographic 5 sense visible light reality, well, I'm going to have a cup of tea and then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, because we're wasting our freaking time, right? But it ain't like that. We are being asked to be a vehicle for this transformation and the communication of this information that brings about this transformation with invisible light. But we are not only the ones doing it. It goes way out through the dimensions. And this is why the control system is coming down. The question is, how traumatic is it going to be as it comes down? Because like a cornered rat, it is not going to go quietly. We're seeing that now. So it's not going to go quietly. There's lots of challenges, and for a while it's going to seem as if they hold all the aces, and then it's going to come down. What I was told 2 decades ago was just when it seems the control system has got all the aces, it's going to come down so fast it's going to be shocking. And that stayed with me all the way through this, and I'm absolutely convinced that's what we're going to see. Because it's about critical mass, it's about the tipping point. The control system, because of this process I'm talking about of vibrational waveform information being the base construct of the universe, and it is decoded through, not least through the physical forms, a fantastic example, because the 5 senses, they receive vibrational information. The ear's a classic, but they all do it. They then, and this is mainstream science, they change that vibrational information into electrical information, which is then communicated to the brain. In fact, the whole genetic structure is part of the process, not least the heart when it's used properly. And that decoding process takes it from the electrical into the digital and the holographic. Therefore, that whatever is in this so-called physical world, holographic world, is merely an expression, a projection of the vibrational level. And so, as I've been talking and writing about for a long time now, there is it goes back to when this hijack took over, there is a distortion in the waveform information construct of this part of the reality. And this distortion plays itself through into the holographic as distorted human behavior, like sacrificing children, sexually abusing children, bringing about banking crashes to just to serve your own interests with all the devastation to people's lives, manufactured wars, manufactured terrorist events, the fracturing of the human personality, the conflict that goes on between humans at every level. This is this distortion. Now, what this truth vibrations, as I call it, transformation is doing, it's healing that distortion. Now, the control system is an holographic expression of the distortion. It's a projection of the distortion. So when the projection's gone, because that's healed, it cannot exist in holographic reality. It has to go. So it's going. The question is, how traumatic is the process of it going? But going it is. And so fast, because there comes a point where the waveform information foundation of the control system passes a point where it's no longer able to project the holographic expression of itself. And thus, in our experience, it's like the control system's just crashed. What's going on? God, it's a miracle. Because this is no longer able to continue to project a holographic expression of itself, because the information construct, which becomes that, is no longer in the information state that projects that. And so it comes down. Everything that's going on in this so-called physical world is an expression of the vibrational information construct, the waveform. And this is another example of why, if you get the waveform right, you get the physical right, the holographic right. And this is why so many alternative methods of healing people are increasingly focusing on the waveform, vibrational level of the body. Because if you get that right, you balance that out, as it projects itself holographically to become this, it is an expression of information, vibrational waveform harmony, and that's what we call health.
Yes.
When there are distortions in the vibrational field, it comes through to the holographic as dis-ease, disharmony, some form of mental, emotional, or what we perceive to be physical dis-ease or illness. And you see what the control system does, because it understands these things. It gets people, it gets its institutions of medicine and science to focus on the physical as if it's real, as if it stands in and of itself. It doesn't. It's just a holographic projection of the waveform. And thus, if you look at mainstream medicine, I call it Stone Age medicine, I don't think it's a bad description, they are focusing on the frickin' hologram in its what they perceive to be its physical state. And thus, they are trying to treat the symptom without treating the cause.
Yeah, that's true. We know that in the books of the University for Medicine until 1940, there were like pictures from the human aura.
Yeah.
And after the 1940, they put it out.
A lot of people don't know this. One of the great architects of this Stone Age medicine that sees a scalpel or a drug as the answer to everything was J.D. Rockefeller.
Okay, yeah.
You know, and what Rockefeller did, of course, the oil tycoon, was funded by the Rothschilds. The things like the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan and Carnegie and all these people, they were just funded by the real masters behind the scenes, the House of Rothschild. But J.D. Rockefeller, he hijacked what you might call the healing medical profession at the time. He made sure that things like homeopathic healing was taken out of the medical schools.
He used it himself, actually.
He died at the age of 90 with his personal homeopathic guy sitting at his bedside.
True. Yeah.
You see how old these people are? The Queen Mother, 102. Look at the Queen, getting on for 90. Look at Prince Philip, 90 odd. Look at David Rockefeller, 90 odd. Kissinger, getting there. All of them. Why? Because they don't get the same treatment we do. I mean, please, because they just want to keep it from us. And the thing about the Rockefellers is an important kind of area, one of the great scams that they use in terms of so many things, not just medicine, and they bring it into alternative healing now because they want to hijack that, and that's the license. This is what Rockefeller did. This is how he took over the medical profession. He got a situation where to be a doctor or to operate in this area or that area, you need a license. To get the license, you have to do whatever you're doing in line with what the licensee says you must do it, or you lose your license.
Actually, you have to go to some kind of brainwash program.
Yeah. This is why when doctors step out of their little box of what they can do to try and help a patient, they step out of it, they lose their license to practice. And so when you've got someone, I mean, I know all this from personal experience, observation, and people I know that work in this whole area, that even though doctors, some anyway, have seen that alternative methods can cure cancer, even advanced cancer, in a way that it just melts away virtually before your eyes, they cannot officially tell their patients to go and try it. They have to say you've got chemotherapy, surgery, or radiation, usually all bloody three these days. And they're not doctors. They're not healers. who are looking for what's best for their patient. They're nothing more than people, you know, they're like terminals on a computer program, just spewing out the same parroted information that's dictated from the centre. This is why so many people in recent decades, vast numbers of people, are rejecting so-called mainstream medicine and going for alternatives. You know, I mean, and you know, I've seen people cured of late advanced cancers by alternative methods. And you look, and then I see in the paper, so-and-so's got cancer, some famous person, or maybe it's just you know, a person who's not famous, and they've got cancer. And you think, you know, this could help you. But they're not getting access to that knowledge. And even if you try to tell them, they're so welded to doctor knows best that they'll go to their grave when they don't need to, following these ignorant people who know what? They know about the body, they think, and how it works. Thanks to what? Thanks to medical schools. Medical schools that have told them how the body works. Medical schools funded, influenced and manipulated by the pharmaceutical cartel that has a massive financial interest, though it's more than financial, why this is done, in the scalpel and the drug. You know, I mean, okay, we'll sell them more chemotherapy and all this stuff, and it kills them. But it doesn't matter, because someone else will be along in a minute with the same disease and we'll do it the same again. Yeah. You know, it's a tragedy. And, you know, when you think about the mentality that it takes to coldly, calculatedly suppress ways of healing people so they die in suffering, when you are engineering wars that pepper bomb cities of civilians, when you are creating terrorist attacks, killing people like a 9/11, traumatizing, you know, not just America, though that was closest to it, but lots of other people around the world by what they saw. On and on and on and on it goes. Dropping depleted uranium bombs so that the next generation have hideous birth defects, which we're seeing in Iraq and places. We'll see in Libya now as a result of that. What mentality does it take to do that and have no emotional consequence? Because they have none. They have no emotional consequence. There is no, oh my God, oh, what have we done? What have we? None of that, ever. Because there are different genetics, and that genetics has had deleted from it the ability to decode empathy. Thus, we look at those things and we find it incomprehensible that anyone could do it. But to them, it's not a problem, because there are no emotional consequences for whatever they do and whatever they see others suffering as a result of what they do. And thus there are no limits. There are no limits. Empathy is one of the great fail-safe mechanisms of human behavior. If you haven't got it, there are no limits. So I've said to people for so many years, if you judge what these people will do and are capable of by what you would do, you've lost the plot, because they don't see the world like us. And if we could, for just a few minutes, look through their eyes and experience their perceptions of people in the world, well, shock just does not tell the story of how we would feel when we see or experienced the way this network of bloodlines sees the world compared with where most humanity sees the world. They're not like us, and that's why they don't act like us overwhelmingly, because what they do as a matter of course we couldn't live with emotionally.
Then I have one last question for you, David. You teach many people how these people function, what their techniques are. So a lot of people worldwide know now already how it functions, and they're kind of waiting. What can we do now? What can we do next? What is your advice for the people who are awake already? What is the powerful thing we can do now to become stronger and change this planet finally?
Well, if they're awake already, they already know. because this is the point. Becoming awakened is to start saying, what can I do about it? And then finding the answer within yourself. You know, intent is a very powerful changer of experience and manifester of reality. Some people call it the will. And if you put out the intent and you mean it, it's just, I'd like to do it, I think, intent. I want to make the contribution to the awakening and the bringing down of this control system, the best one that I can make. And you mean it. And from that moment, you're willing to go with life as it pushes you in different directions to achieve that intent. Then life will put you in the right place to make your contribution, because we all have a unique contribution. If everyone's contribution was standing on a stage or writing books, then lots of other things that need doing wouldn't be being done. We're a tapestry, and so we all got our contribution. So some do it in the public arena, some do it outside the public arena. Either way, it doesn't really matter as long as we're making our unique contribution. But you know, in the widest theme, when you have a network of people, that is a tiny, infinitesimal fraction of the target population. I think we've passed 7 billion now, so they say. Then I think I see a way out of this. You can only control a massive population compared with you if a number of things happen. First of all, you have to incessantly centralize decision making, because the more you centralize decision making, the more power the few are having over the lives of the many. So this is why we've got this incessant centralization of power in Europe and in what we call globalization and all this stuff. This is why they want a world government, world central bank, world army, etc. It's because they need to centralize power on a global level to have power from that point in the hands of the few over the whole population. Thus, anything that is promoted as a solution to world problems as more and more centralization of power, that's the cabal at work. Because anyone with a brain, anyone wants human freedom, they see that it's not more and more power at the center you want. That's how we got into this mess. Oh look, the euro's in trouble because of centralisation of power. What shall we do? We'll centralise it some more. Yeah, okay, yeah. People buy this crap. We need to pull power from the centre. So there's so many points of decision making where people in their own communities actually have a say in what happens in their own communities. I mean, they bloody live there, for goodness sake. And the more you pull decision making away from communities, away from you making decisions away from the people who are subject to those decisions, you have no consequence for your decisions, because you don't have to live with them, these do. The more you diversify and you get decision making from the centre, the more the people making decisions are affected by those decisions. You tend to get better decisions. And instead of being some dark suit in bloody Brussels that you never meet and can't get close to, the guy lives in the next street. I mean, okay, what's going on, mate? What are you doing? You know, this is where we need to go, away from the centre and not further towards the centre. But the other point about all this is that because you're talking about a very, very few compared with the target population, they have to divide and rule the target population. So that we are so fighting with each other that we don't realise that the strings attached to all of us are being held by the same hands. So a key thing, if we want to use this immense power we have of numbers, then we need to put these fault lines aside. I don't care. I'm not into religion at all, in any way, shape, or form. But if somebody wants to follow a religion, be my guest, so long as you don't impose it on anyone else. That's fine. I have no problem. Do what you like. You're this colour. You're that. It's just a vehicle to experience reality. It doesn't matter what colour it is. Sky blue, bloody pink. I mean, so what? It doesn't matter. It's a vehicle. You know, if you had two spacemen on the moon arguing about the fact that one's superior to the other, because he's got a different coloured spacesuit and it was made in a different bloody corporation or something. I mean, you know, you go, Houston, we've got a problem. These two idiots are arguing about this. This is what racism is. Racism is the ultimate ignorance of reality and the nature of, you know, infinite life. So we put down the racist bloody thing. We put down the religious fault line, the racist fault line, the culture fault line, the income bracket fault line. And we realise that this is not a conspiracy to enslave Muslim people or Jewish people or Dutch people, but to enslave all of us. So we've got to start coming together. Because if we don't, we can have a great conversation in our symbolic and literal prison cell when this is all through, they get what they want, and we can sit there for the rest of our lives having arguments in the prison cell about who's got the best religion and which race is superior to another one. You know, we can do it forever, sitting there. I mean, do we want that? No, so let's put the fault lines down now and come together, for goodness sake, into adulthood. It's because we've been children that we got into this mess. And the other thing about coming together and numbers is the system of control can only control the target population so vast with the acquiescence of the target population. Thus, we stop cooperating with our own enslavement. You know, I've said this time and time again. Someone comes out of the White House or Downing Street and says, we've had a discussion and this is what's going to happen. If enough of the population say we ain't doing it, they have no power. No, honestly, I said it's going to happen. We ain't doing it. Oh, what do we do now? Nothing we can do, mate. I should go back in the house. Right? Because they can't do it if enough of us won't acquiesce with it. And that's what we need. They're not really frightened about protests. They're not frightened about protests at all, really. I mean, Occupy protests are different because they're starting to move into this area of non-compliance, non-cooperation, which is a good thing. It needs to go further, but it starts to move there beyond a protest where you turn up. Yeah, I understand. You know, you're expressing yourself. You know, often these protests are just to cry for help. You know, what can we do? But if you just protest and then you go home and business as usual, nothing changes. You know, we've had protests, 500,000 and more in London over the invasion of Iraq. They invaded Iraq, and massive student protests over this appalling increase in tuition fees that are just there to get young people in debt for the rest of their life to the banks, so they pay for their own programming, ironically. Thousands of people protested in London about that. They increased the fees anyway. So protest in and of itself is not going to change anything. Non-cooperation is what's going to change things. And the other thing that we need to start looking at, and those people themselves need to start looking at, are those that work within the system but aren't architects of the system. People in uniform. See, when there's so few of you and the target population is so large, you have to recruit from the target population to run your system. This is where the people in uniform come from overwhelmingly. This is where the dark suit administrators come from overwhelmingly. Not on the level of Barroso. He knows exactly what he's doing, you know. I mean, Barroso, don't start me off. So if we don't cooperate, not even everybody, not even half the human population, but a significant, vast number refuse to cooperate, the system can't cope. It cannot function. And if people start to break away from the dark suit professions and the uniform professions, or at least if they stay within them, refuse to impose Orwellian laws upon the people. It's happening. One or two police here and there in America, they're saying to people, to the authorities, we're not doing that. It's not necessary to treat people like this. So there are some people like that. And as they realise, these dark suits and uniforms, that the world they're bringing in, administering and policing into existence, is actually the world, and bloody then some, because where we've got now in the end, it's just where they've got so far, where they want to go, would make George Orwell wince. They need to realise that the world they're enforcing and administering into existence is the one their children and grandchildren are going to live in. And I had a guy contact me through somebody else who said that in 2 years when he retired, he was going to tell me everything. He was apparently an insider. And because he just looked his granddaughter in the eyes and realised exactly what I'm telling you now. And he was going to tell me in 2 years because he was going to retire then. Well, no. Tell me now. Stand up now. Because in 2 years we're going to be so much further down the road. And it's going to be more difficult. And there is nothing more important in anyone's life, I don't care what it is, than addressing what I'm talking about. Because if everything comes from this. Not just the freedom and the suppression and the Orwellian nightmare that our children and grandchildren will have to live in. But what people of a reasonable age will have to are living in. Question is, by the if you're in your 40s and your 50s, or even me coming up to 60, if we live a reasonable life, I ain't tending to go, yeah, too much to do. We are going to live in this thing. We are going to be subject to this suppression beyond anything even we're experiencing now. So if people don't want to look their children and grandchildren in the eye, because I won't be there then, they want to be selfish like that. Well, be selfish and look yourself in the mirror and realize that you're going to be subjected to this if you live another 10 years. We need to come together because if we don't, we'll be divided and ruled into this nightmare situation. Not that the control system won't come down eventually, but the less we do about it, the more traumatic is going to be the world we live in before it comes down, and more traumatic the whole process of it coming down is going to be. We've got a choice. We've got a choice. You see, for me, life in this reality anyway, is about choice, consequence, experience. So we can make a choice to do nothing. Consequence, nightmare, global state. Experience, nightmare, global state. Or we can say, we're not having it. Choice. Consequence, we don't have it. Experience, a nicer world than we have now. It's all about choice and consequence. They talk about truth and consequence, choice and consequence.
And self-responsibility.
That's what life's about. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah, pleasure to meet you.